I literally feel like I'm in an episode of The Good Doctor because, like, that's literally what you said, Grey's Anatomy. I was literally thinking Grey's Anatomy, The Good Doctor. So at least I think all of us have a bit of a view.
It takes a lot of getting used to, but that's why I'm glad at university already. That's where they start you to go on practice calls that you do. It's like maybe you end at 11 p.m., for example, or you do an overnight shift as a student. They really do get you accustomed to it piece by piece so that you can be prepared for the real world one day.
Which is so brilliant. I like that so much. So our next question would be, for high school students who might want to pursue the career as a doctor, what advice would you offer in terms of subjects? What are the subjects that you would suggest they choose in grade 9?
So I know a lot has changed from the curriculum from the last time when I applied, but the general subjects you really need to do, that's a non-negotiable are your...
Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the Success in Color podcast. If this is your first time joining, welcome. We're happy to have you here. Today, I have another wonderful guest with myself, and I really wish sometimes you guys could get a sneak view on the pre-interview because it's fun times. But anyway, I'll let her introduce herself. Over to you.
Good morning, Mishay. I'm Fadwah, Dr. Fadwah, if whatever you prefer. Fadwah Isaacs. I come from a small little place known as Mitchell's Plain in Cape Town. I graduated as a medical doctor from Stellenbosch University in 2020 with my MBCHB degree, and that's pretty much me.
Lovely. Oh my gosh, guys, I got a whole doctor in the office today. So, without further ado, we're just going to hop right into the questions because I know we can chat. So, first of all, can you tell me what a day-to-day looks like as Dr. Fadwah?
All right. So, it's different for everybody depending where you're working. Currently, my personal situation, I'm a locum doctor in ER hospitals. So that includes your Melomeds, your life hospitals, etc. What normally happens is, so a shift is 12 hours for me personally. You get there at 7 o'clock in the morning. You immediately start taking the first folder off the top of the rack, depending on the nursing triage system, based on different emergencies and vitals and things like that. Once you grab your folder from the patient, you basically go and consult them as you would have your doctor when you visit any doctor in a GP room or so on. We get a history, we do our examination, the physical examination, and then based on certain findings, you may need to then ask the nurses to do certain investigations for you, which could be blood tests, scans, etc. And that's when you come up with a management plan and you instruct the nurses to basically take it from there. And you wait for the results, and then you either decide if you're going to discharge the patient, refer them to a specialist, or maybe follow them up as an outpatient. That's me personally as an ER doctor. I do know that when I worked in a bigger public hospital, or when you're working in a day hospital, for example, the day normally starts where you start with ward rounds. So you'll get there, let's say, for example, at 8 o'clock. You go around with, let's say, your registrars, your consultants, a team of medical students, go from ward to ward, reevaluating different patients based on the different clinical scenarios, and then come up with a plan as a team. Again, basically deciding who's going to be discharged, who needs to be further investigated or further referred to subspecialty or anything like that. And that normally can take anything from 2 hours to sometimes even 4 to 5 hours, depending on how long. And these are like the ward rounds you'll see in your typical Grey's Anatomy shows things, where a team of doctors follow around from patient to patient. And then a lot of the time, after all the ward rounds happens and definitive plans have been made for the patients, people then go and sit in what we call the outpatient department, or what we colloquially known as a clinic, or like sort of GP OPD setting. And that's where you consult the outpatients. They come back for their follow-ups, for their lab results, scan results, etc. And that can last, that's usually after lunchtime or so, then it can last from about, let's say, 12 o'clock until the end of your day. And that's pretty much what it is to be a doctor on a day-to-day basis.
I literally feel like I'm in an episode of The Good Doctor because, like, that's literally what you said, Grey's Anatomy. I was literally thinking Grey's Anatomy, The Good Doctor. So at least I think all of us have a bit of a view. But thank you so much for that. And I'm sure it must be like tiring to go through all of those rounds and things like that. But if it's What's your passion like?
Absolutely. Look, it can be, especially as a junior doctor, such as myself.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of getting used to, but that's why I'm glad at university already. That's where they start you to go on practice calls that you do. It's like maybe you end at 11 p.m., for example, or you do an overnight shift as a student. They really do get you accustomed to it piece by piece so that you can be prepared for the real world one day.
Which is so brilliant. I like that so much. Okay, thank you so much for that. So our next question would be, for high school students who might want to pursue the career as a doctor, what advice would you offer in terms of subjects? What are the subjects that you would suggest they choose in grade 9?
So I know a lot has changed from the curriculum from the last time when I applied, but the general subjects you really need to do, that's a non-negotiable, are your mathematics, pure maths, and then physical sciences. The last time I checked, you need to have a code 5 or a code 6 in mathematics. That's 60 to 70% as a minimum. And then for physical science, you need to have a minimum of a code 6. So that's 70%. Mind you, even with those subject percentages, it's still very, very tough. Medicine is one of the very popular and demanding and more difficult degrees to get into because of the limited space available across universities, and the fact that it's so competitive with students' marks getting higher and higher. And then you have to have an average percentage of at least 75% when you matriculate. So that's your aggregate. So that's subjects specifically. You do also have to do, it's mandatory you do your NBT assessments at any university before you can go and study. For medicine, you need to do both the language and the mathematics component, and there's a certain average they want you to get. That also puts you in better standing to get into the medical school. And then I know back when I applied, you needed to do some other non-academic things that included things like community service, being a sports captain, for example, being a member of the choir, being a prefect, head girl, head boy. I think they've abolished that system since. But that, in my opinion, I still feel that may be a little important because it gives you that sort of general, what's the word I'm looking for, where you can say it gives you a holistic, good set of skills as a human being, instead of just being a pure academic and being the smartest person in the room, for example.
Yeah, and like even while you're speaking now, I can hear character development.
Absolutely.
It helps a lot with that. So I would agree with you there to say that those aspects are actually very much still important.
Definitely.
Because at the end of the day, your career is in everything. And when you're working with people, you need to also be a certain kind of person.
Correct.
So I see where those activities would be very beneficial. That's actually so great.
Definitely.
Thank you for mentioning that. So that sorts the high school aspect of things, right? Then post high school, you did mention the NBT, which I know usually takes place like close to the end of their career, whenever the NBT process happens. So after high school, this is now the application process. Do they just strictly apply for the qualification at university, or are there certain training programs they need to do and things like that?
So I think that is a twofold answer, I would say. Firstly, MBCHB is a strict one route degree. There is no different sort of majors you can go into to branch into medicine.
Okay.
With that said, there are other alternative pathways of getting into medicine, that if I could put it that way. Sort of the most generic, straightforward path approach to medicine would be after matric, you apply to medical school. In South Africa, if I'm not mistaken, there's about 7 or 8 different universities that do have medical schools. Your most popular ones include UCT, Stellenbosch University, Wits, UP, and Free State. There are a few others. And at many of these universities, they do have what they call sort of extended degree programs, which is usually very beneficial for people from disadvantaged backgrounds. So they'll look at certain schools and areas where you're coming from, and they'll sort of class you into an additional acceptance group of people. So for example, where I trained at Stellenbosch University, they accept 250 students per year, but they do cater for that additional 50 students. So you can't per se apply to EDP or extended degree program, but if they see you don't sort of get in on the first round, they do make provisional accommodation for that extra 50 or so students. So like you mentioned, your national benchmark test you'll have to do. Medicine in particular, you have to do it before the 1st of July of your matric year, which is very early.
Yeah.
The reason for that is because medical school, the degree MBCHB closes before every other degree's application throughout the year. Most universities, they'll have like early entrance, and then they'll tell you up until the end of August, September, you can still apply. With medicine, you have to apply before the 31st of May every year. So if you miss the deadline, unfortunately, you need to wait for the next round. And so your NBTs need to be done before the 1st of July. Your application to the university itself before the 31st of May. And then, look, if you don't get in through the traditional pathway, like I said, you can then maybe, if you're lucky, you can get into EDP, or you can apply to alternative degrees, which could be an alternative pathway to getting into medicine. At Stellenbosch University, for example, they have the BSc Life Science degree, where they have specific requirements. So you do your first year of that degree, and if you sort of qualify based on marks and whatever merits they have, you can then transition over into medicine. At Wits University, they have what they call the GEMP program, where you complete your science degree in whatever science major you did. And then once you graduate, you then apply as a sort of a postgraduate student, and they'll slot you into the 3rd year of medical school. So you don't have to start from the beginning. So that's sort of the different pathways that you can alternatively try to get into medicine.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And like, even as you're speaking now, I just want to let our viewers know, for those of you who are looking to pursue the career as a doctor, you guys heard the deadlines. So if that is something you want to pursue, go onto the internet or reach out to Success in Color so that we can assist you with those applications as soon as possible. Do not wait for the last moment.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for that. Then next, we're going to be discussing funding opportunities. So we all know that the one that covers the most careers would be NSFAS, right? Are there any other internships, scholarships, and things that you might be aware of that we can share with our viewers?
So personally, I completed all 6 of my study years through bursaries and scholarships, thankfully.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, NSFAS, the most popular one. Medicine, unfortunately, is the degree that people are very reluctant to give bursaries to.
Okay.
Primarily because of the length of the study program. It's a minimum of 6 years at any university in the country. So you can apply, but a lot of them don't want to give to medicine. The most important ones you can go to is the health department, the Department of Health in any of the provinces.
Okay.
So if you're from the Eastern Cape, for example, you'll apply to the Eastern Cape Department of Health.
Okay.
Western Cape, etc., etc. That's the most important one, the most popular one. Where I got my bursaries through was Asset Foundation.
Okay.
That's ASSET. And then I also got a scholarship or partial scholarship through SANZAF, the organization. They do give bursaries to a variety of degrees and diplomas. And then while you are at your university, they do have financial assisting. It's better than going to a bank for a student loan. It's sort of a student loan through the university, which is what I got. And then you reach a nice agreement with the university. And then you'll pay them back once you're done working, but it's a lot easier than going through a bank and taking out high interest rates.
I was about to say the interest rates.
Exactly. And then I remember when I was in 2nd or 3rd year, they give you this pamphlet at Stellenbosch University where they go through a list of funders. These are just people in their personal capacity or their organizations who do want to support students.
Okay.
So I would hope that I'm assuming correctly, but I think a lot of the universities, medical schools have something of a similar setup where while you're a medical student, you apply.
Okay.
So it's a little bit difficult, if I'm being honest, to automatically get a bursary as before you get into medicine, but a lot of the time people get it somewhere along their 6 years.
Okay.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying this video. Just wanted to take 2 seconds to say thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting us. And if you do find value, if you do see the impact that these videos can create, do share it, do like, do subscribe. And if you're really feeling motivated, if you want to be part of this journey with us, consider donating. There's a link below. You can do a once-off commitment, or you can get in for the long haul and support us long term. Thank you so much for supporting us. enjoy the rest of the video.
Wow, thank you so much for that. Like, at least there are people, and it's so beautiful that people who would want to help some students, especially because you're saying it is more difficult. And I would have never thought so. I'm actually also learning in this moment that it would be difficult, to get funding, but it also makes sense with the length of the course that you have to do, and also the everything else after that. So thank you for that. Now we're getting to the juicy stuff, which is your personal journey. We'd love to know what your journey has been like. How do you, what experience you've built up, and just how you find the profession thus far.
So I was a little bit of a late bloomer when it came to choosing my field. Obviously, you choose your subjects in grade 9, like we all do. I chose the subject pathway, which I just thought would get me sort of the most broad career categories that I could go into, which was you must do physics, like I said, your maths, and then I happened to choose life science. Lucky for me, I had a very, very passionate life sciences teacher, which is this is where I say teaching is the foundation of everything. My life science teacher, shout out to Miss Liberty at Malibu High School, she ignited a passion in me because of the way she was compassionate about teaching her subject. I always say to this day, even kids who were perhaps not the brightest, who would, for example, get 30% or 40% in most of the other subjects, they would get something like 60% in her subject. And to me, that says a lot about the quality of teaching of that specific teacher. So she really ignited a passion in me. I was in grade 11, if I'm not mistaken, that I thought, hey, I like learning about the human body. Why not go into the medical field? And from there, I started exploring, going through university prospectuses, Googling online, because I didn't have someone in my life that I could go to and ask the doctor friend or the cousin who may be a doctor, which would be great, obviously. But I had to do everything on my own. I went through a few after school / holiday school programs where they also helped me to apply for bursaries. That was TRAC at Stellenbosch University, where they helped you apply, they helped you sort of figure out which pathway you wanted to go into. And that was where I decided, look, I want to go into medicine. And then I applied to medical school. I applied to 2 medical schools, which was UCT and Stellenbosch. Thankfully, I got into both of them, and then it was up to me to decide where I wanted to go. Finances was ultimately what led me to my decision. I went to Stellenbosch because they offered me a student loan / bursary from first year onwards. Unfortunately, UCT didn't. Look, it's the same degree at the end of the day, no matter which university you go to. Started my university career in 2015, went through 6 years of university, which is a whole different conversation for another day. Graduated in 2020, unfortunately during COVID. So we were the first set of students who had no in-person graduation ceremony. And you can imagine 6 years of studying to not be able to walk across the stage and get your little clapping moment. It's all in hindsight. Graduated in 2020, and then from there, you have to complete mandatory practical training through state hospitals. I completed my internship at Tygerberg Hospital, which is what Stellenbosch University is also linked to. So I was actually very accustomed to Tygerberg already. So you complete your 2 years of internship at Tygerberg. You go through the whole system of 2 years, which is where they rotate you through every single department in the hospital. You go through pediatrics, obstetrics and gynecology, surgery, anesthetics, psychiatry, orthopedics, to name a few. Once you complete those 2 years of internship, you have to do mandatory community service training. In South Africa, you cannot practice as an independent practitioner if you have not completed both your internship and your community service. So the community service program basically entails, it consists of 1 year where the government sort of just picks you up and drops you on a random Google point in South Africa at the most rural little village clinic / hospital that you can think of in the country. I was 2 hours away from the nearest city where I was. It was in the Eastern Cape. PE was my nearest city. So I was in the middle of nowhere. I had to sort of put on my big girl pants. It was me and one other community service doctor in the middle of nowhere in a very resource limited little day hospital where we had to learn fast, think fast, and do what we needed to do to help the patients in that community. Looking back now, I really appreciated my time there, although it was very lonely. But I feel like it really matured me as a junior doctor. And I walked away with a lot of confidence. From there, I've now then officially become an independent practitioner at the end of 2023. So this is my second year as an independent practitioner, which is where I'm currently in my phase where I'm locuming in different emergency rooms across Cape Town private hospitals.
Wow, Miss Traveler. And also just speaking to what you said, like when you had your experience in the rural clinic, I think I'm just connecting it, with those activities that the university requires, which is also part of character development, and just knowing that you could go through that, think fast, learn on your feet, and do all those things. I'm sure you probably still, are just grateful for those moments and things like that.
Definitely. Like I said, even if you might not be the head girl, head boy, if you're a prefect, sports captain, sports vice captain, whatever, it gives you that sense of leadership role where you need to sort of take charge of a team, because as the doctor on site in an ER room, you are it. You are the senior, even though there's nurses with 20 years of experience. Yes, they can assist you, absolutely, and I'm very thankful to my nursing staff for that. But you as the doctor ultimately have to make the decision and instruct them on what to do. So you need to have a few leadership capabilities, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Lastly, we just want words of wisdom that you would like to share with students who are going to make this difficult decision. Anything that you can share with us?
So firstly, I always say to everyone, never let your current circumstances determine the extent of your future capabilities. Just because you're coming from Eastridge, Nyanga, wherever the case may be, there are always people out there who are willing to help you. You just have to find them. That brings me to my second point, build relationships. Get out there. Network with people. If you find a lawyer, for example, that you want to look up to, speak to them. If you find a pharmacist, a nurse, a doctor, whoever, communicate with them. It may be annoying to some people, but that is your way of showing them that you are interested, that you are trying. There's always people out there willing to help you. And then lastly, do not be afraid of a little bit of hard work, because a little bit of hard work goes a really, really long way. And people will ultimately notice that, not just in your career, but in life. People notice hard workers.
Wow. I almost said amen to that, girl.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Fadwah. Oh my gosh, I had a ball of a time. And all the best. I'm giving a sneak preview. You're actually going to a shift after this, right?
That's great, yes.
So enjoy your shift. Have a beautiful day. And thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us. Really so valuable. Thank you for joining us today on another episode of Success in Color podcast. I am Mishay, your host. Bye for now. If you found this content valuable, you are more than welcome to give us a thumbs up and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also find us on TikTok as well as Instagram, where we share some more interesting content about career planning and beyond. Thank you for joining me with the Success in Color podcast. My name is Mishay, your host. Bye for now.